Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up these individual shot shells. We got the 20 gauge, 12 gauge shells here, and you can see we're using shells I just purchased at Walmart. These are pretty cheap, probably used for clay pigeons, upland birds, but they're the 20 gauge is the 7.5 shot, 7/8 ounce load inside. The 12 gauge is number 6 shot and is a 1 ounce. We're going to open these up. I'm going to pour our shot into a container I've got set in here. I've got the grid boards that I made just to basically hold these in place while we're working. You can do this a number of ways. You can open these up with a knife, a utility knife, razor blade, sharp knife, whatever you want to use to get them open. But one of the things that I noticed when I was doing this is it's kind of cumbersome. You don't really get a clean cut on the end of the shell, which is kind of important when you're doing roll crimping. If you're not really, if you don't really care about whether you have a clean cut on the end of it or not, you can definitely use a knife or whatever you want to use. But I was kind of messing around with an idea to create something that I could do a precision cut on. And I went through a number of iterations with a couple of things and a couple ideas that I was messing with. Some things that I've seen on YouTube with other people doing them, and I came up with these. I ended up dipping these in hydrographics film, which makes them kind of neat looking as well. But it's basically a shell preparer. I've got the 12 gauge here and the 20 gauge here, and we're gonna give a demo of those as we're actually doing this video. But they work pretty well. You just basically take your shell and stick and you're going to cut inside you get a better view of it here, inside the cutter. And this has a razor blade attached to it. I put it on there specifically this way so it's very easy to change the razor blade out. And you just insert that in here, put a little bit of pressure, and I've got springs on this, so you get some tension when you're pushing down on it. You can feel it actually make contact with the shell, but you just push down. Get my capture over here. Make a couple of turns until you feel the blade engage with the shell. You can actually hear it. And as you pull out, the beauty of it is it all spills out nice and neat for you in the container that you got below it, and you get a real clean precision cut on the end of this. So we'll do a couple more of these. I'll make sure I got all the BBs out of there. Next guy in. Put your cutter back on. Make a couple turns till you feel it engage. Empty all your BBs out. Get the top out. Move on to the next one. Shell in. Press down. Turn. Beautiful cut. Same thing with the 12 gauge, same cutter, same principle. Shell goes in, press down, you'll feel it engage. Nice cut. There's a cutter on the market. I'm not sure exactly, I can't remember who makes it, but it's a little bit more cumbersome. Not really a fan of how it works. It was just kind of the reason that gave me the idea to try and make something on my own. But this works pretty well. I like the idea that the shell, the shot, dispenses out of the bottom straight over the container, so you don't really have to worry about making too much of a mess. But that's the demo. I'm gonna run through the rest of these. We'll get them all set up, and we'll move on to the next phase of the video. And as you can see, once you get all of the shells cut and all of your bird shot poured out into a container, you're left with as many as you did. We did 25 each, 20 and 12 gauge. And I actually have these shell holders that I made that allow you to seat them perfectly, just to make sure everything's nice and uniform. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually trim the wad on each of the 12 and the 20 gauge shells down about 1/4 of an inch. This will allow for us to insert a overshot card on top of the wax once we actually get them poured, and allow for a space to put a nice roll crimp on them. So we'll get started here. We'll demonstrate a couple of them just to show you the process. I'm not gonna film all 50 showing you how to trim 1/4 of an inch of the wad off, but we'll demonstrate a couple of them just to give you an idea of how much to trim and what it looks like. Okay, so what we're doing here is actually just pulling the wad out enough so we can get access to it. We've got a little pair of cutting tool. Just trim off about 1/4 of an inch of all 4 petals on the wad. Doesn't take that long, maybe 15-20 seconds per wad. It's very much worth it, the amount of time that you actually end up spending on this process. The end result that you're going to get a nice roll crimped wax slug rather than one that just has the wax exposed at the end. Not only is it a more aesthetic looking slug, but it's actually a lot less dangerous. Keeping them exposed like that, you got the possibility of creating a rather big mess if you had them, stored in a place that was warm or left them in your truck. Come out and you got a nice pile of wax all over the place, messy, and it's also dangerous inside your shotgun to keep. If you have 4 or 5 of them loaded inside your shotgun and you're shooting, the barrel gets hot, you have a tendency to possibly have a catastrophe on your hands should it actually melt the wax inside there. So roll crimping, in my opinion anyway, is the best way to go with these wax slugs, and we'll show you what they look like. We're actually going to take them out to the range and shoot them once we're finished, but this just gives you an idea of the process involved in getting the petals cut down just enough so, like I said, we can get a good roll crimp on it. Do one more here and just show it, get an idea, get a little bit closer so you can see exactly how much we're trimming off here. Like I said, just right at about 1/4 of an inch. And we'll finish these up and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, we got all the wings trimmed on the 12 and the 20 gauge wads. A little bit closer here so you can see how they're sitting down inside each of the shot shells, right at about 1/4 of an inch, maybe not quite 1/4 of an inch, but pretty close. You'll end up with pretty much a 2-inch wax slug when we're finished here. But there's the 20 gauge, sitting all nice and pretty. And again, these are just some shell holders that I made for the purpose of keeping things organized. You don't topple them over, have things spill out. But we'll get to the next phase of the video here once the wax is completely melted. But the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you the grid boards that you will need unless you want to do each one of these by hand. But we'll show that process here next. Okay, we're at the next phase of the video. What we're going to do is we're going to get the shot shells set up in the custom-made grid boards that we made here. We've got the 20 gauge and the 12 gauge grid board. We're going to show you just how easy it is to insert these and get them all set up and ready to go. So go ahead and demonstrate for us, Corey, on the 20. And these basically just pop right in. And they seat perfect, so they'll be flush when you turn this thing over. They fit nice and snug, so when you actually turn it over and set it up, they're not going to come flying through the other end. You see how fast they actually go in. But then these will be set up and ready to pour. I'll turn it over here and show you what it looks like when you actually set it up right. That took all of about a minute. Flip it over and you can see they're all sitting there nice and flush and pretty, ready to fill them up with the wax and the BBs to create the slug load. So we'll go ahead and we'll get the 12 gauge set in here. They basically go in the same way. There's no need to demonstrate that whole process on video, but you see how well they go together. They go together very quickly, and we'll get them set up here. And I think our wax is pretty much getting to the point where it's about ready. So we'll get set up and start pouring them. Back in a minute. Okay, for the wax, you can do this a couple of different ways. I've seen some videos out there with people using double boiler. I like this method better. It's a little bit less mess, less hassle. Not too much cleanup involved. If you got wax left over, you can just leave it in there, use it for the next batch. But with respect to the wax, there's a couple of different varieties of wax out there, more than a couple probably. I've seen people use candles. I've seen people use crayons, straight up crayons. There's videos out there with paraffin wax. I use a microcrystalline wax mix in mine. I throw in a crayon for coloring. You don't necessarily need to do that, but I do some high-speed video shooting and adding color to the wax. Creates a slug that comes out that's a little bit easier to capture on high-speed video. Once your wax is completely melted, get your shot and add your shot into the wax. Let it get up to temperature before you actually start pouring into your slugs. Easier to do, and actually will make the shot actually flow a little better in the wax as you're pouring it into the slugs if it's up to temperature. So give it a minute before you actually start. There's obviously a number of ways you can actually do that as well. I took a spoon, just a regular old tablespoon, put it in a vise and cranked down on it until I got a nice little bevel in there. Almost makes a funnel like on the spoon, but it works pretty well. We'll demonstrate that as well when we get to that part of the video. Okay, back in a minute. Okay, we're back to the video here. We've got our 20 and 12 gauge shot shells inserted into our grid boards. And what we are going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and take all that shot that we pulled out of the shells and we're going to insert it into our melted wax. Give that a stir with the spoon, Corey. We'll give this just a minute or two to let the shot get up to temperature with the wax, and then we'll be back to our next segment, which will be loading up our shells with the wax and the shot. Back in a minute. One thing that I actually wanted to make sure we caught in here was you want to make sure your wad is temped down and seated pretty good, because when we were cutting the petals off, some of these we pushed it back down with our fingers, but you want to make sure it's seated good. So what Corey's doing here is he's just running through with our temping tool, which basically is just a little dowel that's cut off, perfect size. I think it's 5/8. But he's just pushing the wad down, make sure it's seated good in there. We'll do that with the 12 gauge shells as well before we start pouring. But that's one thing I want to make sure I capture that in here, is you want to make sure that your wad is seated good down inside your shot shell. Okay, we are at the point now where we're going to start filling these, and Corey is loading up the 20 gauge first here, and what he's doing is he's filling the shot shell with enough of the shot up to right at the level of where we cut our wads down, about 1/4 of an inch. So right at the top of that. Let's see if I can get in here close enough to where you can see that. And then topping it off and just covering the top of those BBs with a layer of wax. and there's just enough room in there when we actually finish this and these harden up. We're going to temp them down with the same tool that we actually were running through these and pushing the wad back down in, and it'll give us just enough of a gap to put an overshot card on these and put a nice roll crimp on them when we're done. But as you can see, this process goes kind of quick. It's not super fast. You don't necessarily want to be rushed while you're doing this, and you make a huge mess. But the good thing about these boards, I coat them with a coat of polyurethane, so the wax actually just comes right off really easy. So you don't have to worry too much about spilling. That's the nice thing about it, is that it doesn't make a big mess. You don't have to worry about being really careful and not spilling wax on it, because it does come off fairly easy. But you can see here we're taking our time. We're filling it to about the same level on each one, right at the top of the wad, where the petals were cut off. And as I mentioned, we'll temp them down a little bit once the wax has a chance to harden up a little bit. And we'll put our overshot card on and put them in the roll crimper. I'm not going to bore you with doing all 25 of these. You think you kind of get the idea of what we're doing here. But we'll come back and show you what it looks like once all of them are filled, and we'll let it dry, and I'll come back and I'll film the rest of the process. Okay, they've had a chance to actually set up and dry pretty good. So all we're doing now is we're taking our temping tool, and where the wax has had a chance to kind of settle in the middle and is up on the sides, we're just basically doing a little bit of cleanup, pushing the wax down, getting it seated nice, so it'll be nice and level. We'll take them all out and start putting our overshot cards on them and get them ready for roll crimping. Back in a minute. Alright, all of our shells have been kind of cleaned up here with our temping tool, and we're going to start taking them out of the grid board. They come out really nice and easy, and the really good thing, to get a good shot over here, is one thing you can see is how clean the shells are. You do this without a grid board and you're pouring wax, and you can see all the wax that's on the grid board. That'll be all over the side of your shells, running down over your table or whatever you're doing. The grid board makes it nice, no mess. Your shells come out nice and clean and pretty much ready to go straight into the roll crimping phase. But they come out slick, pretty easy. We're basically just taking them out here and putting them back into our shell holder. Keep them nice and uniform, and we'll roll right into the next phase. We'll pull the 20 gauges or the 12 gauges out, do pretty much the same thing, get them all set up. They're all nice and solid. They're ready to go right into the roll crimping phase. So we'll roll right into that here in just a moment once we get them all pulled out. Okay. What I wanted to demo here real quick is just to give you an idea of the cleanup on this. Because of the fact that I do coat these with polyurethane, there is no sticky, no oily mess. Straight up wood. Like I said, these are pine. You would probably not have any problem with the wax itself, but the oil would stain and it'd be all nice and messed up for you. But the polyurethane does a really good job of keeping the oil from actually getting into the wood as well. So I just want to give a quick video of that. Cleanup's easy, quick, done. Okay, what we're doing right now is we're placing the overshot cards on top of the wax, getting them ready to put them into the roll crimp. These things go on quick. Not too much to this. I punched these out myself. You can buy them. Ballistic Products, probably Midway USA. They sell them 20 gauge and 12 gauge, but I punch them out myself. Do them in different colors. But we'll get the overshot cards placed on the 20 gauge and then put them out on the 12 gauge and get started with the actual roll crimping. Back in a second. Okay, just wanted to capture a quick video here of what the shells look like with their overshot cards on them. We got all 25 of the 12 gauge and 25 of the 20 gauge with their overshot cards in place. And I'm going to get the drill press set up here, and we'll get the roll crimp tool installed, and we'll start the roll crimping on these guys. Okay, we're all set up. We're getting ready to start the roll crimping. Just wanted to introduce the products that we're using here. I got these from Ballistic Products. This is the 20 gauge roll crimper. We've actually already got it installed in our, this is, not an expensive drill press. It's probably about 129 bucks at Home Depot. It's a Ryobi. Any particular brand will do. It doesn't have to be the same one. But you just need a drill press. You can do this with a hand drill, but I highly recommend investing in a drill press if you're going to do more than just a batch of these. But the roll crimper is installed in here for the 20 gauge. We've got the 12 gauge roll crimper. We'll load that one up when we get ready to do the 12s. I do take a little bit of petroleum jelly and just kind of rub it around the rim here to get it lubricated a little bit. It helps rolling these crimps on, gets a nice crimp on it. So we'll go ahead and get started here. And you want to do this nice and slow until you get used to it a little bit, with an idea of just how much pressure you need to put down on these to seat the crimp, because you don't want to over crimp these, but you definitely want to make sure you get enough of a crimp that it's definitely going to hold the shot shell overshot card on top of that wax load, and it ain't going to go anywhere. So he's taking his time here with this, doing a little bit of a time, so you get a nice crimp on there. And that looks good. Yeah, that's perfect. But once you actually get a rhythm down for this, and get a feel for just exactly how much pressure you need to put on those, the process actually goes rather quickly. Come around here for another side view of it. It's actually a better view. Shot of that one. You see it does a really nice job. It's a nice roll crimp on these. The tool works very well. So we'll punch out the first 25 of these 20 gauge, and I'll do another quick video showing a few of the 12 gauge with the roll crimp after we get it installed, and that'll pretty much wind it up. But the amount of effort and work that goes into creating the roll crimp, I think personally, is more than worth it, with respect to not only with the way it looks. It comes out a much nicer looking slug, no mess. You don't get the wax all over everything by using the grid boards, and also with respect to the roll crimp. Instead of just doing the wax and leaving the end open, as I mentioned before, not only for aesthetics as far as how it looks, but also for safety reasons. You don't want to just leave that open. That's you're just inviting a mess and/or danger that is not necessary. If you spend a little bit of money and get the roll crimpers, this is a much nicer, much cleaner, much safer process of creating wax slugs. I'll be back in a minute with the 12 gauge. 20 gauge all done. All 25 of them are done. This is going really fast. Started on the 12 gauge. He's already over halfway finished. Literally taking, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds per, if that. So, like I said, once you get a rhythm going, just to pretty much how much pressure to apply down when you're doing the roll crimping, this goes really quick. and it does such a nice job. Puts a beautiful roll crimp on the end of these. Still over that overshot card. Makes for a much nicer looking slug, much safer slug, wax slug rather than just keeping the nice, pretty, keeping the end open with the wax exposed. As you can see with this one, right up here. Did one of these just so we can show you. Like I said, you can shoot them like this. A lot of people do. See the wax on the outside of this that we spilled over the edge. That wouldn't happen inside the grid board. But you can do them like this in the grid board and just fill them all the way to the top if you like shooting them like this. But I would highly recommend roll crimping over this. I don't shoot them like this. I just don't feel safe. Would rather feel safe out there shooting them. That's why we roll crimp ours. But a lot of people do shoot them like this. So, but that's pretty much going to wrap this up. That's well, you're all done quick. That's 25 20 gauge roll crimped and 25 12 gauge roll crimped. All done. So that's our video. Thanks for watching.